Hello everybody, today I have the pleasure to propose to you this key 68 part 2 entitled Science and Spirituality, a possible love story and or an impossible love story. It's up to you to decide. We're gonna try to give you a maximum of elements for you to take your own decision. Alright, so as we saw, this is a holistic approach, trying to not to convince anybody to say who is right, who is wrong. We try just to establish eventually the restitution of the past. This is what we saw with the history, the previous video, for which we demonstrate, we show factually that this is honeymoon since the beginning of civilization everywhere in the world, and maybe there was a split, a divorce with obscurantism of Inquisition. Okay, so that's the main point we see before. Now what we're gonna see today is two approaches and two protocols. Okay, this is different perspective. Okay, we can consider that science is more tangible, is more based on demonstration with rationality, with facts and so on. Okay, is more analytic analysis, and for spirituality is more regarding faith and feeling. Okay, so it's two different things. Regarding the reasoning, okay, the method, the approach, there is two things, okay, deduction and or induction. Okay, so deduction is according to what is already existing and discovered already. Okay, so this is the philosophy of Plato. Then from what's existing, you compose, you assume, you modify slightly, and you establish some postulates. Okay, then hypotheses, and then affirmation. Okay, so regarding this approach, the only problem is that you never start from scratch. So there is never a discovery from scratch. Okay, so what does it mean? It means that we are a little bit in a loop. Okay, second aspect is induction. Induction is concerning new facts. Okay, it's like a neologism. Okay, what is it? It's the creation of the new word. Okay, so you use the same letters and you compose differently and you obtain with a certain meaning and so on. So this is the same. Okay, for a scientist approach, this allows to find a new results. Okay, so it's a kind of enrichment, enlargement of synthesis. Okay, observe facts for which we will try to find a finalization through a theory. Okay, it can be a sum of testimonies. Okay, this is two different approach. Okay, so in addition of that, to try to really understand that it's, you know, there is a book quite known worldwide. You know, a woman comes from Venus and a man from Mars, showing that men and women are different. Okay, really? Yes. In the perception, in their sensitivity, and so on and so forth. Okay, I'm not saying that all women are like this and all men like this, not at all. But the perspective is different. The approach is different. Same for spirituality and same for science. Is different kind of approach. I insist a lot, and behavior. So for you to visualize a little bit and going further, this is the principle and the analogy of what we call Vitruvian man. Okay, that is from Da Vinci, which is not exactly belonging to him, but anyway, just the concept for you, if you don't know, it's Vitruvian man is the manpower symbol. Okay, so it is concretely what does represent this. A square, a man in the completeness, the wholeness, included a square and a cycle. The square represents science, physics, Okay, left hemisphere, rationality, analytical approach, framework, structure, methodology, protocol, reasonable structure, and so on and so forth. Okay, so this is the approach of science. Okay, visible. Okay, this is experimental first, demonstrable, and third, reproducible method. Okay, you need to be able to reproduce again and again. It's not a random result. It is supposed to be the same result each time you do it. Okay, so this is a kind of autonomy regarding the process. Well, anyway, spirituality is more representing the cycle. Okay, that's to say the right hemisphere of the brain. Okay. This is metaphysics. Metaphysics, meta in Greek means beyond the physics. So you have the visible part, which is science, physics, and the metaphysic is the invisible part of the iceberg, of the tree of life. The visible part would be physics, and the invisible part would be metaphysics, the roots of the tree. Okay, we cannot see the roots of the tree, but they exist, and they even feed the entire tree. Okay, so this is really important. But the approach are different. It's intuitive, is more intuitive approach. Okay, is I mean, talking about the unknown. Okay, and spirituality and the science is more talking about known. Okay, so is more faith, faith is more feelings, is more the notion of random, invisible testimony. We could consider, to resume, science is more responding to the key question, how, and spirituality tend to reply to the question, why. Okay, basically. Okay, so, but both science and spirituality both aim at the seeker, the researcher, and those who want to know more about the meaning of life, existence, why we are here, how does it work, why the planets are there, and so on, how they can, let's say, be balanced, all these kind of things. Okay, so regarding life in general, let's say, mankind, nature, phenomenon, meaning of life, and so on and so forth. Two important quotes. One of them is extremely known. It's Rabelais, French scientist, who said, "Science without conscience is only reign of the soul." Okay, which is also true for the contrary. And by the way, Einstein said later, a couple of centuries later, he says science without religion is lame. Okay, religion without science is blind. Science without religion is unbalanced. Okay, and religion without science is blind. Okay, so for him, definitely, he believed in the complementary. Both needs respectingly each other. Okay, so this is an approach of Descartes. Once again, this is an approach of a need for reason. Reasonable. What does it mean? It means that either you swallow, okay, blindly, okay. And it's kind of superstition, and sometimes, and it still happen, quite often, some religious people, spiritual people, they do for doing. They do because we have to, okay? But they don't know. So, they don't know the history, why the rite is done like this, the ritual, what's the energy behind, and so on and so forth. So, doing for me is a little bit, let's say, a narrow vision, and is limiting the process, okay? Anyway, it's not a judgment, it's just, and then, so the question is more in favor of lucidity, okay? What does it mean, lucidity? It means, concretely, a certain discernment to avoid superstition. So, many people laugh about Descartes, when he tried to demonstrate in quotation mark the existence of God, it was not by A plus B and so on, like an equation. He wanted to, instead of believing for believing and the like superstition and we believe because the institutions say to believe, no, he tried to have a certain practical analysis and trying to start with facts, okay, like the more you study the universe and so on, we'll see later, and the hardest it is to not to believe. You understand? So it was more in this approach. That's why he has not been really understood for that. But anyway, let's continue with a notion of. I would like to understand the metaphor. I would like to establish between quantum mechanics. The principle is not quantum mechanics. Quantum mechanics is at a very small scale. Okay, so it's not that. It's just for a metaphor. Okay, to make it short, quantum mechanics. The principle is the everything is based on a particle. Okay, particle, and or, I mean, to make it short, particle is a fixed point, like a pixel, for which there is before that a field of potential, the united field of potential, okay? And so either is a sphere of potential, either it's a wave, either is a drop, okay? Either it's just a state among a lot, okay? So it's a parallel, it's a metaphor, it's an allegory. I'm not talking about quantum mechanics. I'm just talking about the aspect. We could consider that the particle is linked to science. It is fixed, demonstrated. It is a state, okay, statement. And spirituality would be the unknown, okay? Let's say science is demonstrating what is known, and spirituality is trying to feel the unknown. You understand? So it doesn't mean that they tend to demonstrate it, but it's not because we didn't demonstrate things that it doesn't exist, and vice versa. Okay, that's why I say we cannot demonstrate the existence of God. We cannot demonstrate the non-existence of God as well. Okay, because it's never exhaustive. So we are all blocked in our maze or let's say labyrinth. Okay, but just to make it short, because there is a tutti quantique, we hear quantique everywhere. Okay, it's sometimes a little bit, a shortcut, a bit short. By the way, as a proof, Niels Bohr, one of the pilgrim of quantum mechanics, he say, if you believe you have understood quantum mechanics, you didn't understand anything. So, showing that it's not so easy. Okay, so one thing very important regarding science, no one has never seen any atoms, electrons. Nobody can represent 1 million of light years, for example, or Planck's law. Planck's law is 6.26 multiplied by 10 power 39. It doesn't represent anything to anybody. Okay, so it's impossible. So actually, the fact not to be able to represent yourself this is means that it becomes something non-accessible anymore, and this is a problem. And that's why also it's good to have analogies and so on, or at least some democratization of science, of course. One of the limits for me, this is point of view and what scientists complain sometimes. How a theorem and so on, theory is recognized in science. You need to write papers. Paper is like an article, an official article, academic article, which is recognized by the peers. But the peers are a kind of assembly of orthodox, very rigid and strict most of the time, scientists. What does it mean? It means it is in a loop. Okay, so it's like if you have Eurovision and the ref, I mean those who give the marks, the grade, were 80 years old. You can imagine that it wouldn't be not so fashionable. It would be more classical and so on. What do I mean thereby is that, of course, if only a minority with a certain point of view and sometimes lack of open-mindedness, it's normal that science doesn't evolve as fast as reality of discoveries. Okay, it's not because certain articles and papers are not recognized that the theories are not right. So maybe we will evolve also in the future thanks to this enlargement of perspective and more flexibility maybe. Another point is the approach I like of BCG principle, Boston Consulting and so on. They used to ask for theories and so on, to do some workshop with people out of science. Okay, so with fresh eyes, okay, to try to see if it does make sense and so on. Why is this approach? This is exactly what you have, you know, when the kids are innocent and a bit naive, when they are 5, 6 and so on years old, asking all the time, Mommy, Daddy, why the sky is blue and so on? Why? And sometimes you just realize that you don't know anymore, okay? Because we don't question anymore. So the approach is the same principle also when you have a trainee, you know, for work experience placement, students coming in your company, as in your laboratory, if you are I don't know, engineer or a biologist and so on, and or for business in a company, the student arrives with fresh eyes, allowing sometimes to have a different perspective. This is for me a really interesting principle. You know, it's like in law. In law, you have the official rules, okay, laws, and then with justice, you have also what we call case law. Case law is case by case. Is not an official law, it's just an exception making, having a notion of legitimacy. Okay, so I think it would be great to have more this approach like paper, official and so on, and also a kind of case papers. Okay, anyway, just as an evolution and so on. Well, let's talk about the complementarity. If we see, I say, I really recommend, and this is the new paradigm, the new era will be more based on that holistic vision, global approach, okay? Instead of duality, good or bad, okay? Light, darkness, valley, mountain, okay? Inspiration, expiration, breathe in, breathe out, okay? What do you prefer? You prefer to breathe in or to breathe out? Okay, stupid question, right? Okay, so why applying the duality? Do you prefer your mother or your father? Okay, can I love both in this love story? Can I love my wife as well? Can I love my kids? Can I love, and so on and so forth. So this is these elements of holistic perspective. Okay, duality, breath in, breath out. It is a nonsense to have to choose. So why should I choose spirituality and or science? Okay, so this is combining and together we're stronger. Well, just to do a little bit of semantic, okay, scientia in Latin, it means knowledge, but for two aspects, practice and theory, both combined, okay. In Greek, the word knowledge is gnosis. Okay, Gnosticism, okay, Christian Gnosticism is Christian esotericism. Muslim Gnosticism is Sufism. Jewish Gnosticism is Kabbalah, and so on and so forth. Okay, Gnosticism is knowledge, but this is the esoteric part. Okay, so, but the knowledge is supposed to be the fruit of research and real scientist approach. Okay, so initially it is combining. Okay, it's not I have to apply, but I'm talking about esoteric. I'm not talking about religion for everybody, for Mr. Everybody, Mr. Nobody as well. I'm talking about more esoteric part, which is more, which is deeper normally, and the true essence. Okay, so, but you know, originally religion comes from, etymologically, in Latin, religare, which means to connect. So what does it mean to connect? To connect to yourself first, at the center. Once it is the case, you can connect to a kind of triptych, okay, to mankind, okay, regardless the origin and so on, believer, not believer, no, humankind, okay, they have been created like this. First. Secondly, nature, okay, our true nature, the fact we are not detached, this is a complementarity, this is a reconnection and so on. And then the invisible word, angels, God, whatever, okay? So that's the point, okay, of religion, normally I say. So, let's say, and spirituality means literally spirit, spirituality is spirit, okay, spiritus, and also breath, okay? So, what I try to say that it's even in the notion of etymology, it's a complementarity, okay? Of course, there is a difference between theory and practice. As we say in English, practice makes perfect, of course. So that's why it's important also to study everything, science and or spirituality, by your own experiences. Okay, that's important. You can be enriched with the testimonies of other people and so on. Okay, demonstration, factual demonstration, but it's also good to check by your own as well. Actually, if I had to resume, everything is according to a reference. Okay, a reference, a grid, a window, and or, you know, a grid of analysis. It's landmark, like point of vision, okay, point of reference, and so on. So, and I told you, because we have some cells, like the big house is science, and then you have one window which is biology and so on. And then you have amongst that, you have some subset. But unfortunately, there is few crossing checks, you know. So it's like having just a small, I mean, it's not the big picture, it's a small picture. It's like from observing and analyzing through a keyhole, okay? You know, when I say everything is according to a point of view, this is basically the theory of Einstein, okay? Einstein theory with relativity. Everything is relative, subjective, according to a point of view. Look at this. If I do that, okay, what is the speed of my hand? Okay, if it's like this, it may be 5 kilometers. If I do like this, maybe it's 2 kilometers. According to what? My body? According to Earth? According to, let's say, the solar system, the galaxy, and the universe, and the clusters, the superclusters, and so on. So the speed would increase. So the speed is always according to something, and which is the point of reference. Okay, so it is exactly what he demonstrated with the fact that the mass impact with the notion of attraction and curves the space-time. Okay, that's why, and this is demonstrated, if you are very close to a big building or like pyramids and so on, time lasts quicker. Okay, on the other way around, in movements, if you take supersonic flight, the time flies. Okay, that's the case to say. So it's quicker, and it has been measured and so on. This is the principle of Langevin en français, in French, sorry, twins, with the experience of putting two babies, one at the light speed, 40 years, and 40 years later, but of course the twin who stayed on the planet is 40 years old, and the one with the light speed is still a baby. Okay, so this is the notion of everything depends on the referential. Okay, this is really important. The map is not the territory. Okay, the map is not the territory. Very important. You know, even for many things, this is impossible to represent a sphere on 2D paper, A4 paper. That's why even the projector, Mercator, Peters, and so on, they are wrong. I mean, they are closer to the reality, but like an exponential. Okay, so that's why when I was young, I remember Africa was very small compared to the reality. Russia was absolutely largely bigger than the reality. Okay, Africa is largely bigger. Russia finally is shorter because it's the northern hemisphere, and so on. So this is just subjective perspective. I insist. The map is not the territory. Even that, you know, you think maybe that if we take measurements of territories, okay, like frontiers and so on, coasts, you will obtain different results according to your measurements. Okay, if you take from GPS, if you take, let's say, with hands, which is taking a long time, but with, you know, for example, little animals like snails, it will be different, let's say, results. Okay, so same. If I take the frontiers in '88 of USSR, and now, I mean, in 2000, and then even now with what's happening in Ukraine and so on, it wouldn't be the same results. Okay, same for the evolution, the erosion in Bangladesh. Okay, it's a pole there, means that water is increasing and gaining surface on the territory. So it's possible that Bangladesh disappear from the map in few decades, in even one century or even more. But anyway, just to think that the only, you know, everything depends on a point of view. I insist so much. So it's true for science, it's true for spirituality as well. And the way of measuring impacts also the results. The only permanent thing is impermanence. This is Buddha. Okay. In other words, and this is Tri Xuan Tuan, a great French Vietnamese scientist, friend of Mathieu Ricard, who is the translator of Dalai Lama and so on. So he's a biologist initially. His father was a great philosopher and so on. So he became a monk, Buddhist monk. But just to show that both are possible. We can be spiritual and also scientist. So he say the only thing that will never change is that everything always change all the time. Okay, he's an astrophysicist, and actually he quote also let's say the Buddha who say it's him who say Buddha, by the strength of his mind, had the intuition that everything moves and evolved. Now modern science abounds in this direction. The universe is expanding. Everything is constantly changing. So what does it mean? It means basically then the intuition of the Buddha was, in a certain extent, correct. So this is also good to think that when he say he was an intuition, so indeed, it was an intuition, so it doesn't mean that it was the truth for Buddha. But his intuition was correct. So it means that his third eye was correct. It means that, the intuitive dimension allows a first step. And then science, and then a protocol of demonstration and so on is also important. But, you know, all the discovery sometimes is a little bit, I feel it. Okay, so that's why in the two protocol, in the two approach, I think both definitely are completely, there is a complementarity. You know, this is interesting because the goal is to widen the field of the methods, of the methodology, of the approach, of the tools and so on, to enlarge our perspective, our consciousness all the time, of course. And this is the unknown, because I insist largely, it's like if this tree, the visible part of the tree, would be science, what has been factually demonstrated and so on. Okay, and the invisible part would be the roots and so on, would be spirituality. But both are not in the same perspective, okay? But it's a complementarity. You cannot have one without the other one. And so the one is the unknown and the second one is the known. And the known is not, let's say strictly finished. There is discovery that we will have this coming years. Okay, so the unknown is reduced and the more and more, and the known is more and more. But even that is delicate because it's endless. You know, when Newton say knowledge is a drop, ignorance an ocean. So they know that in advance is difficult to compensate and to have a good balance. Socrates said differently, all I know is that I don't know nothing. Okay, so it's the same principle. So that's why I think it's quite relevant in this period of time, in the transition, the new era and the new paradigm, is to balance and to take some different, you know, if I take just medicine, to use conventional medicine and in parallel of that, parallel medicine, alternative medicine, you know, not really conventional medicine. If it works, I mean, combine everything possible. If the result is positive because, okay, it's placebo, it's neuroplasticity, epigenetics and so on, fair enough. At the end, if the result is positive, I think it's interesting to continue like this. Okay, even if we cannot reproduce and we are not sure, because it depends also of the version of the person. If people don't believe it, they're absolutely against it, it will not work. But I think we are in a period of time for which we are invited to mix, to harmoniously spirituality and science, modernity in a certain extent, and tradition. Okay, with updating, with cleaning up, with taking what vibrates and to reject what is not. Maybe there is some evolution and so on. But I think this holistic approach is the fact that we can enlarge our perspective through the transdisciplinarity, the multitask, and so on so far, and by crossing different elements, perception, and so on, with a certain benevolence and also tolerance. Well, I invite you to think about that. We still have 2 videos because it's quite deep again. I hope it will help you to shape your own master key, to open up the doors of consciousness, love, whatever you want. As you know, all the roads lead to Rome and to the Dome and to home. Thank you for your attention and see you very soon.